offering service towards. It sounds like Jane's done a pretty good job with his in-house team of mitigating some of that work to outside contractors. From our perspective, it is to help not only mitigate the service calls that happen on these systems. We believe we can preserve the life. The systems also are indicative of the overall age of life. These boilers probably have 10 plus years on them. In what we do, the average age of life for boilers are between 10 and 15. That's when you start to see the routine breakdowns and some of the systems that may need to be replaced. So we believe by offering this system, this preventative maintenance program will help mitigate the routine service calls, and will also help defer capital dollars towards expensive replacements. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to kind of look over some of the systems that I put on your asset list, which would be on the Appendix C, which is the end portion. Our program will help streamline an overall inventory of these systems. It will help not only provide real-time updates of these scheduled preventative maintenance visits, but it will also help keep a very good analysis when if something were to happen, we take responsibility and ownership of our work. Well, we have a full track record and a customer dashboard. It's a facility portal that we provide. It's a system that we upload at no extra charge. It's a part of our program, and you can clearly see everything that's being maintained. Where in this case, it's a 1-year agreement. You may be looking at what I proposed in August. There's been no changeover with our pricing. As far as what we're offering, nothing's ever given. I itemized each school. Of course, there's a budget in mind, so it's pretty much it with regards to the program, what we would expect. All of our techs go through comprehensive backgrounds. We do a child abuse check every year. We do the Pennsylvania State background check, and they do an FBI check on all of our workers. I know that that's important when it comes to, obviously, a school setting. We make sure that everything's done. We believe we're a company that's pedigree. We hang our hat on service. My job is to really help work as a team and build a partnership and reliability that you can really see value in for not only this year, but hopefully earn our way and earn your business and manage your expectation in it. Everything I have. I don't know if there's any questions any board member that may have.
Any board members have a question?
I only see an hourly rate here. I don't see Appendix B, by the way.
C.
I don't see
Yeah,
appendix.
I have an
There's an
update.
A and a B.
They're out of
B's before A.
I don't see an overall cost.
It's on the back, actually.
There we go.
This annual plan does provide a discounted time and materials rate to the district in the event if anything would happen outside of our one annual visit. We offer a discounted rate for time and material services. And then anything equipment related, if the school board and district decided to move forward with us, we offer an additional 10% on equipment and materials that would be affiliated with any specific time and materials cost. Really, that's what we're trying to do, is help prolong these systems. It does go hand in hand with the boiler inspectors as well. We believe that preventative maintenance also offers predictive maintenance as well. That having that one-time check in place can really, our guys can get in front of a potential problem that may happen, and we report directly to the department and really gives them an analysis, and that kind of marries to that customer dashboard that I'm talking about. So,
Do you do this with any other organizations in Indiana?
yes. So, you may have heard of Huckestein, you may not have. We've been working in this market for a couple of years now. We have routine maintenance plans with Indiana County Courthouse. We just recently brought on Indiana County Prison, small PM up there for the cooling towers and boilers. And we just brought on the Indiana County Emergency Management Agency, the 911 center. We're growing our service division right in Pittsburgh, but our service division will go about 75 miles outside of the city. Average response time is about 4 hours in the event of something where you need to get a hold of us, and we can send one of the 2 designated technicians that we would put on your site. Try to keep that consistency through, so in the event if we're able to earn your business beyond 1 year, those 2 techs know your system's in and through, which really will help build that partnership even more through, because we will be familiar with your systems.
Or any of the techs from out this way, even Catanian
Yes.
area? Or-
Yes, we are, so we are our techs are all trained under the local steam fitters 449 union. We also employ the local 354. So we do hire techs in Indiana, Indiana County, Allegheny County. Our service map right now, we have about 25 techs on the service side. We're a full firm, so we offer not only just service, controls and automation, and design and build. We recently commissioned projects with Brownsville Area School District. Probably closest to this area was Greater Johnstown Area School District. We helped upgrade several of their systems. So the schools are a vertical and an end user that we love to work with. Build those partnerships. We take a responsibility and accountability for all of our work. And my job on the business end is to meet with Buildings and Grounds Committee every 6 months to see how we're doing. Is the program working out? Are there things that we can do better? We can provide business analysis for the business manager to go over how we plan for capital projects. And really outside of that, if there was any other questions.
Are there any other questions?
There's training here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will cost us about $20,000 a year. Will this prevent emergency boiler calls and disasters with no heat in the middle of winter? And will it extend the life of the boilers?
My hope is that this preventative maintenance relationship is going to give us more reliable systems. You know, they're boiler specialists. We are not. So this is something that they do day in, day out. We do not do that. So I think there's an advantage to taking a serious look at it to see, is this, the road we want to travel down to make sure that our systems function now and on into the future and give them a longer life through this service plan than we can provide with our in-house staff.
And we as a board member, I as a board member have to ask this question. Is there not a local contractor who does commercial work? I know there are that could do this similar work.
I kind of have the same question. Who's doing annual checks now? Who's doing, the pre-winter fire up
It was always,
checks?
for many, many years, it was done with another company out of Pittsburgh, who has been for the last couple years not very responsive to our requests.
So we had somebody we had a contract with
We did
before?
not have a contract. It was a time and material. We never had a
Okay.
contract with them.
Okay,
And sounds like we didn't do it every year and we didn't do every boiler and every,
It was done every year up until about 2 years ago, and it's pretty much that my phone calls went on deaf ears.
When,
but I guess you never answered my question.
They
Is
were
there
out
a
here
local-
once in the past.
Are there
year and a
local
half.
contractors that could do this similar work?
I've never looked for anything closer than the arena that I've been. I've talked to 3 different service providers in this arena, this quality, all from the Pittsburgh area.
So I guess, Mike, then I'll ask you the question. Why would we not hire somebody local to do this? It does commercial work. We have some larger HVAC contractors that do commercial work. So why would we hire you instead of them?
Our company started in 1977 as a mechanical construction company. We've built our name on that pedigree of service. We believe we like to go the extra mile for our customers. Our structure, our model, guys like me coming and really double checking our work, talking about what's important to you. I think maintenance is subjective in a way where what maybe one company believes to maintain one system versus what our philosophy is varies, maybe it doesn't. But we've been doing this type of work, like Cheney has said, for close to 50 years. And we're always investing in our people in training and making sure that they're constantly updated on how to work with these systems. I can't speak for other companies. That'd be wrong of me because I don't really know the scope of work that they present. I can only speak for myself and be accountable for our program. And I would feel confident that some of the companies that I named here in town would, they would probably recommend it if I had to say. Some of them are newer, but we do go the extra mile when it comes to making sure that these systems are running the way that they should to prevent and mitigate any possible breakdowns and making sure that we're offering you the best value that we can at an honest price. We've worked hard at that. We're recognized by the Commonwealth as an approved mechanical contractor through the CoStars program. So that's something that we feel we hang our hat on that as well because it is something that you have to work towards. It's not given. And I believe that would be the appropriate answer that I would answer.
All right, I appreciate it. Okay. Well, what's the committee think? Jim?
I think we definitely need something in place, it's always hard to compare an N of one. I don't know what I'm comparing to. I like, it sounds very thorough. I like the proposal. I don't think the cost is out of the question. I just don't know what to compare it to.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Ron.
There's almost 3 pages of things that they do, and I guarantee haven't been done to our boilers in the last 3 years. And the cost of these boilers are such that getting one more year out of any boiler will more than make up any of these costs. So I'm certainly, I'm a little bit like Jim, I'm certainly in favor of investigating these and doing this work. I suspect that we do a lot of just turning them on and hoping they work until they don't, and then they call. I'm not aware of anybody locally that has this kind of manpower. This would take a significant amount of time for somebody to do and only do boiler work. And most of the businesses in town do a lot of residential work and they don't have a lot of manpower.
Any other board members have comments, questions?
I have one. Now, when you talk about doing these inspections, are you talking 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Because it's only done once a year.
To give you an idea, to appropriately and responsibly do the preventative maintenance for your bigger boilers and not the domestic hot water boilers, you're looking at between 8 and 9 hours. It's a very labor-intensive inspection. To maybe go back to your question to separate a little bit about what we bring to the table is simply the scope of work from the Appendix B. If you compare apples to apples, again, it goes back to our company's philosophy of previous experience. What we've been successful at is making sure that consistency of our work is done the right way the first time and it's uncompromised. We make sure that, again, having those 2 techs, being able to have also techs that come from OEM companies. We hire from some of the bigger name HVAC companies, Carrier, Trane, Lincoln. That allows us to be a little bit more versatile with our approach, so that when we do these site surveys, we can identify the serial number, and we have a nice pool of guys that are familiar with these systems, that are gonna really take it upon themselves to make it, responsible in making sure that they take care of everything the way that it needs to be done. And that,
You good? Tony, and I'm sorry, I forget, Eric, you guys have any comment? You know, Eric, you're sort of in the design business of the HVAC, so.
I mean, I'm not really on the
Remote.
service side. I can say that I've heard of Hutchinson. I've never worked with them. I've worked with clients that have their service contracts. I've never heard anything negative. So, yeah.
The only thing that I might offer would be that I find a 1-year contract limit to be, in my mind, too short. Because I've seen other types of preventive maintenance contracts. I used to be involved in some of that with a company where they said, we just need this to survive through our contract year. And that's a danger that you have to consider, is that what does this, we want these boilers to last 3 to 5 years more, not just through your contract. So you want to look at what they're actually repairing and doing in that time to have some level of confidence that it's not just going to get to next November. It might, if we're spending this money on it, we want it to last another 5 years, not just another 5 months.
And I'm glad you said that, because I wondered that too, when I saw it was just, and you mentioned it's just a 1-year contract. That sort of surprises me too. Are you interested in a multi-year contract, or is this typical of your?
absolutely. I don't ever assume anything, because we've just started this partnership with a few projects. I wanted to make sure that you guys felt comfortable, one, with the program, and two, obviously your feedback of how would a great custom agreement look for the school board, for the district. The value proposition that's offered between a 1 to 3 year, that's our next tier, is a $2 off of the time and materials rate. So basically, we're offering an annual plan to get, as of right now, the discounted rate per hour, straight time from 7 to 3:30 is $127 per hour. If you do a 3 year or greater, it goes down to $120. With the same idea that it's a 10% on any equipment or materials that would be affiliated with any specific time and materials call outside of that annual fee. So if you felt comfortable doing a 1 or 2 year where you didn't want to revisit this year, I can most certainly revise it. It's 100% what the board is comfortable in doing.
What's the longest contract you typically do?
5 years.
Are we, Jared, since they're on CoStar, we wouldn't have to put this out for bid, right? And it's under the dollar amount too.
Yeah, and because it's a professional service, we wouldn't have to put it out to bid anyway, so.
So I guess it's something we want to think about some more, or
Let's get a 3 and 5 year proposal. We'll take it to the board to the next meeting. Vote it up or down.
Well, since we don't know, and since they don't know what we would be expecting and, anything different that would come up, would you be willing to do a 1 year contract with the provision that at the end, if we choose to go another 2 years, you could kind of prorate it so that it would be like a
There's an
3 year
option.
contract
Yeah,
or a 5 year, so that
Absolutely.
we can get to know you?
Absolutely. That's 100%. I can work that with my vice president of service, and we can really tailor it to the way that everybody feels comfortable about moving forward.
Is that the contract you want to see proposed? 1 plus 5? Is that what you'd like to see?
1 + 4.
1
Right.
plus 2 or 1 plus 4?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that, 1 plus 4.
I do have another question too. So the amounts that you came up with, like for the senior high school, 4,942, is that composed of, assuming that there's 8 hours of maintenance on each of the power gas boilers and a certain number for the dishwasher at that 127 rate, or 127 rate? Is that how you came up with that number? Is that a,
So it's indicative of the size and the BTUs of the size of the boiler. there were some smaller systems, but you guys have, two OEM boilers throughout the district, which are RBI, which is a little bit mid-sized boilers. But what's very labor intensive hourly wise is the HB Smiths, the 4500 and 3500 series. There's a lot that's, needed for us to not only break them down, but the scope of work of which that we have to, perform is that much greater maybe than some of the other smaller boilers throughout the school district.
So basically, that's what you did. You said, it takes 8 hours to do an HB Smith at 127 and 8 hours to do this at 127.
So
And
that's,
you come up with the whole,
right, so that's the discounted T&M, the time and materials, right? That would be for, if anything.
that's for breakdowns.
That would be for outside of, if
Okay.
anything were to happen where you would need us, provided a service for us to
Okay.
come up. That's the discounted rate that we offer under the maintenance agreement that we're offering.
Okay.
My feeling is 3 years would be plenty to look at that, get a 3-year proposal. But I would be hesitant to go over 3 years, personally.
It wouldn't be unusual to do 1 plus 2 plus 2.
Yeah, how long have you been with the company?
This coming September, I just hit 2 years, this past September.
And you're saying there's about 3 people on the team that you'd send here, 3 different people. So is that
We would arrange, depending on the size of the boilers, we would arrange a primary and a secondary tech that's
So-
responsible.
So Terry, I think there seems to be some interest in these, in the longer term.
Yep.
And my suggestion would be follow up on both Tom and Tony there, have them look at a 1 plus 2 plus 2. And then bring it back to the board and we'll consider it.
I agree. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You guys have a nice evening.
And you're gratified.
All right, moving back to number 1, the Eisenhower renovation. 1AI is the bid results. And Jared, did you have an idea of who was gonna cover that, or?
I am assuming that's a conversation with attorney and there are copies there for everybody. I mean, to go down through them, I'm assuming the committee wants to discuss all the alternates and what they look like. And
They were all sent out to everybody last week. I guess you'd thrown a figure out of the base bid going with J.C. Orr as the general, and then the lowest bid for all the mechanical, the electrical, and plumbing.
Well, if you'd like, I can give a brief summary of the way that I see the bids. And if Eric has commentary, I'm sure he'll step up and offer it. When I did an estimate for you at the last CD submission, we do that on a square footage and expectation to the quality of the building that you're receiving to establish those square foot numbers. And I will tell you that we were pleasantly surprised that the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing numbers were positive from our perspective, that they were actually bid under the numbers that we expected. But the general construction number is significantly higher than we expected. And I'm not sure what drove that. The number, when melded together, is pretty close to what we expected. I've talked to Jared a little bit about it, with whether or not you have the contingency in or the contingencies out and some other things. But comparing it to our estimate is one thing. I think the real thing that I thought we were going to talk about tonight is how it compares to the Act 34 numbers that need to be considered in how you award these contracts, or if you award the contracts.
And I think probably we need to hear maybe that first.
So
If we have deducts, I guess.
Does
that
Tony,
No, let me just say, the deducts will make no difference to the project for the base
Where I was
pay.
going to. So we might as well talk about the Act 34 then.
but Tony, I think I think it's important that we kind of understand how these, your comments about how all the mechanicals, the plumbing, the electrical and so on were, in the ballpark or slightly less. I think the board and the public also need to understand kind of what happened in the bidding process and how it shook out. Okay, and then you commented about that the general construction was higher, but you don't have a feel for why that is. Is that
Well,
correct?
what I would say is that the last 3 to 5, let's say at least 3 years, have been highly volatile in the public bidding market. And we had seen what I would consider to be rampant numbers in mechanical and electrical bidding responses. We were generally pretty close or had a fair understanding of the general construction numbers because quite frankly, it's not as complicated perhaps. It's not as material laden as the mechanical and electrical. There's manufacturing numbers that were just going crazy. So when I say I was a little surprised, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing numbers are favorable compared to our estimate because we based our internal estimate that we shared with this group based on our experiences over the last couple of years. I don't have any specific reason to say, oh, well, boiler prices have come down or copper pipe is reduced. I don't have any of that kind of internal information. What I can tell you is that we base our estimates on what we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months. With the general construction, what I'm saying is that I think that because this is at least 50% a pretty, in lay terms, messy renovation, that has caused some of that escalation in the general construction numbers because it's more renovation than it is new. And that could be why we see, Jared may remember when I was at the pre-bid, we said, look, it is what it is. Bid it the way you see it. I really am not interested in hearing 400 questions about it because you have to walk through the building and see what it is. So I will tell you that I don't care what we do as design professionals in projects like this, there is going to be some unforeseen conditions that just get uncovered as they go. It might be that they're covering their numbers because they don't know exactly what it is. But the reality is I really don't know why it's a little higher than I expected it to be.
We talked earlier too. I mean, it's a lot easier building a new building than renovating. And the
It's easier to narrow
workers,
the numbers down.
right, and the workers like to build a new building, not renovate it. So you might, there's probably some truth to what you're saying is why the numbers are bigger.
I'd like to propose that we agree on the base bids, which are real numbers that we can add up and come up with a number without taking any of the deducts. That's a real number then. Okay, then we can go back and look at the estimates and the Act 34 based on that number. Okay, and I like to try to work in the realm of real numbers if we can.
Yeah, but I think Tony said it doesn't matter whether we deduct or we don't deduct.
Well, so quite frankly, I would have expected the alternates to generate somewhere around $1.5 million as a number. That's sort of where we put it. It's only $900,000. So it's only 2/3 of what we sort of expected it to be.
And that's if you take all the deducts.
That's if you took them all.
Even the ones that are exclusive.
Mutually exclusive. So there are some alternates here that we can talk about that are quite frankly mutually exclusive. In other words, you can't take them all because they overlap and they say, well, do this and not that, or do this and not that. So some of that exists. So quite frankly, I did have some conversation with others. I'm not seeing the kind of value that makes sense for the school board to accept the alternates that we see the values here for. They're just not big enough to make a difference. And I like to do it so that it's all deducts because then you can't play this horse trading game of people saying, well, this is an and this is a deduct. They don't really put numbers on it that make sense. They're putting numbers on it that they think we're going to bet you're going to take that one and not that one. So sometimes the numbers on alternates are tough to nail down anyway.
Right. So I guess, Tom, you know me, I like keeping meeting going, so.
All right.
So we had seen that value in an email, and we can share that for sure now. It's 21 something is the
21,
base.
Yes.
The four base bids come in at 21,130,477.
What was that again, Tom?
21,130,477. $477.
$477.
That's adding up the four base bids.
Prime
Those are all-
contract.
Those are real numbers. Okay, and that's what we're working against.
So I guess the next question is, like you're saying, I'll ask the first question, is there any interest in deducting anything? I guess I'll ask that question first.
The only one I would deduct, of all the deductions, would be the pavilion at 41,000.
The what?
The pavilion at 41,000. I'd rather plant
So
three trees.
G8 is the one he's mentioned.
Now, there's some mechanical ones that I didn't understand from that I read it here for. So I don't know if any of those that you recommend we take or not. But again, they weren't big numbers, but the only general one was the pavilion.
So it's 41,000 deducted
Is that what it is?
from JT Orr.
Each one is the radiant panels, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, H1 is the radiant panels. So H1 and H1A go together.
We're on the heating
Yes.
increase here.
So H1 is the deletion of the perimeter radiant panels, and H1A is the deletion of the controls associated with the radiant panels. So those two go together.
Do you think we need them?
They take the edge off of the cold windows.
Then why would we even consider taking, that was one I was gonna,
Because it was 200,000.
so.
Well, to me, and again, I'm not a mechanical engineer and I've seen these panels. What I would tell you is that there is a system that we use called CommCheck, which is an evaluation of the building envelope against the energy code. And it's not as much windows as it looks to be, because it's more than half of it is aluminum panel with Kynar coating. I think it's a good idea, but the question, and we could ask Eric, I don't know the answer to this, and dangerous to ask a question you don't know the answer to, but what is the time frame of spending $200,000? What's the life savings of the $200,000 versus having them or not having them? Does that make sense to you? Like, if you don't put it, how much more does the boiler have to run to make up for it?
Right.
Well,
I mean, from an
Well, I think
energy
it's from a
standpoint,
comfort, to me, it's more of a comfort.
it is a comfort thing. From an energy standpoint, it makes no difference at all. Your boilers will run exactly the same either way. Do you need them to heat the room? No, but it is a comfort thing. I mean, the people that sit against the wall, they'll get a draft, they'll radiant cold off of the wall. So it's a comfort thing.
the room, the air handling machines are designed to heat and cool the room.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then these radiant panels are only at the windows designed just to warm the window air, the air coming off the windows. So,
Most older buildings have them, right?
no, very few buildings actually have them because they cost $200,000.
Well, I mean, you are correct that a lot of old buildings have them. Newer buildings, not as much.
Right.
But yeah, older buildings have them very frequently.
Okay, do that.
And I think
A lot of
this
those-
building has
Just go ahead.
the classrooms,
We have unit ventilators here.
but that's similar type.
Well, that's sort of an air handler on the wall. but-
Yeah.
My point is we can come back and revisit this question once we figure out where we sit with the rest of these questions, with the overall question of how you calculate your estimate and how that compares to the bid and what we have to do with the PDE and that paperwork. If we have to cut $200,000 out, this is a good place to start. If we don't have to
If
cut
we
it
have
out,
to cut it out for what, though?
see, I don't know the answer to the other side of that. Tony did an estimate. I think we're within 3%. You think we're 17% down. I'd like to know how that estimate and how Act 34 paperwork interlace so that we can decide what we actually told the public on the cost of this building.
Right. And I think Ron Repack, our solicitor, I think, and Tony, there was an email sent out to the board that explained what line in the Act 34 or what number and on what line on the Act 34 booklet that you have to compare that number. And from what I understood it to say was, it's the number that relates to new construction. Am I incorrect, Walter?
That's my
See,
understanding.
that's what
I'm happy to describe what that is,
Yeah.
Terry. So,
Okay.
so Act 34, I spoke with, the gentleman's name is Jesse Fry. He is the facilities director for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. I knew his predecessor well. I don't know Jesse as well. But the discussion was that we didn't have to do the PlanCom process. But Act 34 is a legislative issue and you have to do it. And the easiest way to get to whether or not you need an Act 34 hearing is to do certain sections of the PlanCon documents. Because doing the math without those spreadsheets is very complicated. So I said, okay, that's great, we'll do that. And that's what you're seeing here. Now, what we didn't do is, what we only did was a small section of Part A, which defines the project scope, and Part D. We skipped B, we skipped C, we did D, we skipped E, we skipped F, we're on G.
G and H.
And G asks us to reevaluate based on bid results what we said in D. That's where we're at. And G only calculates the expenditure for new work. So there is nothing that in the PlanCon documents that asks us, other than an estimate by us, what the value of the new work is versus the value of the old work. So we did an estimate and split it out that way. And as it turns out, it was about a 50-50 split that we believed at the time would be the right numbers to put in the form. That estimate is what generated, and then we talked about it with Jared, and we talked about it with the financial consultant. That methodology that we used is what generated the $11,136,050. And what the Act 34 legislative requirements are is that is now a fixed number for the new work of the additions. And if you have bid results that are less than 8% greater than that number, you don't have to have a second Act 34 hearing. However, Part G asks us to ask the contractors what percentage of their bid is for existing work versus new work. And my recommendation to Jared was, we don't ask them that because I don't have any way of knowing what those numbers might come back as. So I don't think they would have any vested interest in making numbers up. So that number, the new work number might go up higher than it is right now. So right now it's around 14 million based on the same evaluation criteria that I used at Part D. That's an internal number that we generated. The 14 million is $2 million over the 12 million. I don't see a way in what we're doing here to massage those numbers to get to the 12 million.
So your bid documents, the items and the quantities aren't separated into new construction and renovation.
That's correct.
So there's no way for you to really do that.
That's correct.
So that's why.
There's no way for the contractors to do that. When the contractor.
Well, let's make it up.
Well, I mean, that's basically what we're doing. We're basically pulling numbers out of the butts.
Right.
Okay. The base number and on page 21 is $20,333,650 was the base number of those two numbers added together. The only numbers we have are the bid numbers that are serious. None of these spaces, and I'll use sprinkler systems as an example. We never asked, and your drawings didn't differentiate what was existing and what was new.
You're right.
So a sprinkler system that comes in and they build a water line, they put a bolt in, they pull that water in, and the water gets distributed to the old and the new sections. Okay, the sprinkler contractor, subcontractor will give them a base price of one number. They didn't break it down. So, and that goes across the board. Every system that's in that building is not broken down. So we're dealing with a bunch of funny numbers, made up numbers, including your initial estimate. It's you taking your best guess. I'm not picking on it.
I get it.
But the bottom line is, we told the public that this project was gonna cost $20,333,650. And instead it cost $20,330,000.
No, 21,130,000,
Okay.
which is
That's
about
the-
about
those are the two
$800,000
numbers I'd like to
difference.
focus on. The
So they're
breaking,
not entirely funny numbers because we're all coming in close to the same.
no.
numbers.
The funny numbers are breaking down between old and new.
Well, yeah, but we've established that.
Well, I hope we establish it, but that's what one of this Act 34 pivot turns on, is the way we broke these numbers down 6 months ago. Okay.
Right.
Tom, did you want to read Pat's email from 5 o'clock?
I'm reading it now.
Yeah, you didn't see that, no.
Since Jared a question, asked him if he read it.
I was just
didn't-
reading it.
Want
Yeah,
to read it out loud to us?
no, you can read it
It's
yourself.
pretty long.
It's
pretty
long and
Yeah,
it
it's
goes
long and
into, it
detailed.
goes into all
So-
of this.
So Tony,
on that email address.
Tony, the other question that I wanted to ask you specifically, okay, since this whole thing hinges on new construction and not the renovations. So we elected to replace the 4 rooms that were totally destroyed with this new construction. Is that included in the new construction numbers? Because we're really just replacing what we had. Now granted, maybe the gym is in the office are kind of new and added and so on like that, but all we're doing is replacing those 4 classrooms that were there to begin with.
That's an interesting point, Walter, and
And so if you
but the
took,
reality is this,
if
my estimate no longer matters. That's the issue.
Right.
It doesn't matter what number I tell you.
well, I understand, but my point is that in trying to come to this calculation, because what we have to do is, your estimate was your estimate, and now we have these contract numbers that are hard numbers at 21.1. And so the question is, as I understand it, you applied the same percentage
I did.
this time as you did last time. Is there a different way to look at this and say, okay, since these 4 classroom replacements are not really new construction over the existing building,
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
okay, and then if we deduct that from your percent calculations, because they're what, $500,000 a classroom or something like that? I don't remember the numbers, but maybe that gets us down to the point where we're in the ballpark.
And I understand that, Walter. What I'm getting at is, I don't know. It could be a question of audit. Who's going to decide that me telling you $2 million is what 4 classrooms is worth is the right or wrong number at this point? It's the public. And I can tell you whatever number we want, quite frankly, I can figure that out, but I have no basis for that. The basis is now, as I said, the Part G documents where the contractor tells us. And that's really the only way to verify those numbers. And we're not bound to do Plan Con, we're just bound to do the Act 34. And I don't really have any other way of looking at it. I could say, well, we think the 4 classrooms should be part of the existing. I'm happy to say that. But if we don't do the second Act 34 hearing and we end up spending 21 instead of 20, somebody's going to ask that question. And my answer is going to be, well, I think 4 classrooms belong over here and not over here.
Yeah.
That's the only answer I have.
Let me ask this question. Do we have a building permit yet?
No.
I'm sorry, I called the borough and talked to staff. They thought we could have a building permit by next week.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that the site problems are minor, and they're ready to go with the buildings.
That's great.
So that changes this conversation a bit.
A little bit. I mean, if we need to have the Act 34 hearing, it's going to cost us 20 days from advertising.
No. I talked to Jesse about that. He said you could have that meeting Thursday if you wanted it.
Then we're short. That's not what Ron said.
Well, he said he had to check a few more things, but it doesn't sound like we're subject to the 20 days.
You're not. You could have it tonight if you want.
Didn't
When did
So
that
Jesse,
come up?
Jesse
That's not in
who?
the email.
Jesse who?
Jesse Fry is the director for Pennsylvania Department of Education.
Yeah,
So
when
I
I
had
thought,
this conversation with him last week.
yeah, and Ron said that you didn't have to have a cooling off period afterwards. So he
Right.
said that the 20 days would be when you post it, but the day after that, you could approve it. If you
Correct.
didn't hear any.
You don't have to spend, you don't
But
have to
he's-
advertise it, do anything. You can just.
But you have to have the 20 days.
Well, that was Ron's interpretation of the law, but I mean, if Jesse is the guy that oversees it,
He is.
I'm willing to defer to Jesse, you know.
Can I have his email address I can email
Question
him
on
right
the
now and
Yeah.
see if I can get.
Sure.
Because you guys have been firing around a lot of numbers and it's really been confusing me. In the
You join the crowd, Jim.
in the Act 34 paperwork that I just had up, it lists on page 24 the square foot area for the new construction and then total. So 27,850 square feet for new, and then 60,000 for the total, giving that percentage of 0.4642, right? So if we apply that percentage to our bid amount that we got, that 21,130,477, the new construction number is 9,808,000.
But that's not how it works.
But isn't that how you got the 11?
No, because when you look at the existing building, there is inherent value in retaining the shell.
Sure.
And that value, pick a percentage, is 30% of the overall cost. So you have to apply that 30% to.
Before or after the.
Right, so you have to apply, you have to say that this numbers can't be all $300 a square foot. Some of them are 210 and some of them are 340.
Right.
So the 340 is all the new, the 210 is all the existing, it averages 300 or whatever the numbers are. Does that make sense to you?
None of it really makes sense.
Well, if we were building a new building, you can see that, so even when we do it, if you look at my original estimate, you'll see that I didn't use the same square footage numbers for all of the building components. The gymnasium is a different construction cost value per square foot than the admin or than the
Certainly,
classrooms.
yeah. No, I
So
understand
those
that,
numbers,
yeah.
they all end up being an average of one another, which I didn't do the way you're saying. I did it based on my knowledge of what it costs to build a gymnasium that's that, or that's.
Because even when you go back to the Act 34 numbers, the new max that we had, the 11,136,000, as a percentage of the total max, the 23,467, that ends up being 47%. And it's a 0.1% off of what we applied in the Act 34. So I don't understand how you can get to any different number. I got to your 11 by applying 47% to our 23 million.
But your $23 million includes things that aren't in the construction cost.
That's all right. That might be part of what
The
I'm missing. I'm
construction
really
cost-
struggling to find
It's
the.
21, the error in there.
No, the 21 includes a whole bunch of stuff that's not. The bid results are the 21
The
million.
21,130, yeah.
And so, as Tom will point out, there's general conditions and other things that are in those numbers that don't get put in Act 34. They're separate line item numbers.
I guess what I'm saying is,
I wish I knew exactly
If
how
we
the
had-
Act 34 numbers work.
if we proposed in the Act 34 hearing, our maximum budget was 23, our new max was 11, which is 47% of that. We got a group of bids that do not break down new and old. And we totaled that up to 21 million, we apply 47% to it, we're well below that number. Why is it not that simple? Because
the bid I'm okay with that. If that's.
we have
before the position, we can say that.
we have no way to differentiate, like you guys are all saying, we're splitting hairs, if they do plumbing, they're tying into the old, but they moved a pipe 10 feet one direction, is that new or is that renovated?
Let me ask the question a different way, because at the Act 34 hearing, I don't recall for sure, did we talk about, we talked about a $24 million cap?
Right. Yeah.
Right? And I am not quite sure sitting here as an architect doing this, what the big concern is about just saying the bid results are this. It's still under the $24 million cap, but the spread of the numbers isn't exactly how we saw it. I'm not sure what the issue is with that.
Right.
It seems like we're trying to avoid a meeting that's, somebody's in the, I'm not sure what's gonna happen with the public. They can always complain about something, but that's always the case.
Well, it's the
So if
20-day
we're all
rule.
inside the
I mean,
cap,
do
I'm
we
not
have
really
to-
sure
we-
what the
You
issue
know, we
is.
need to start the project, so the question is really comes down to this, you were asking about it, this 20-day rule. Are
As
we
far as I
subject or
was
not?
told, there is no 20-day rule
So-
for the second hearing.
Can this gentleman put that in writing?
That's what Jared's emailing right now.
Because I think that's a key issue. It's not about, I don't think anybody minds having another meeting if that's what we have to do, that's fine. It's just that we need to get started. Because it's already fall, what? tomorrow?
Well, the issue is you can't award these contracts until after that meeting.
Yeah, but that's the point.
If
Do we
we're out
have
of
to have
bounds.
do we have to have the building permit also before award?
No, you can award the contracts, they just won't start construction until they have the permit.
The only issue with the building permit that I would caution is there might be things in the building permit that cause change order. I don't think that's true, but it could be.
Or if the permit is delayed for some reason.
Right.
You've already awarded a contract.
Okay, I was told there was nothing on the building side, there's some minor problems with site work. That they thought would have been cured, and it had not had confirmation yet.
Okay.
So,
It seems to me until we have that answer, it's pretty hard to figure out the timeline. Timeline's more important to me. As far as I'm concerned, we came in under the 24 well before, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah, see, that's where I think they hang up.
I mean, listen, I can send Jared a number saying, based on the calculations as we understand them from the Act 34 booklet, 47% is X. If Ron Repak's fine with that, I'm fine with it. If that's what we want to do, it makes no difference to me. I mean, I can defend that number, I can defend the numbers I've given you. I don't want to be in a position where I can't defend this.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. No one would want, just stick their
Right.
neck out,
Right,
but
right.
that's the way it was presented. That, I mean, I'm not an architect. I'm never built a school before, but that's what we presented. We presented that percentage. It's actually typed out in the,
Actually, so what I'm trying to explain is that we didn't present that. It is calculated by the PlanCon documents. The numbers that I presented are only disclosed on page, the numbers that I actually put in are on page 21. Those are the numbers that I literally put in the new. And you'll see, you could tell me I'm wrong here, but you'll see that I calculated 3.6 for the new general and 2.7. That's literally the only number that's different. There's a little bit of difference in the electrical between new and old. But, when you get past line item 6, all of those line items are things that we can't identify today. They're all buried in these bids now. I don't know what else I can do. So if you look at page line D.
so, but it ends up being the same number though. You're talking page 21. When you get down to F, those are the same relative numbers, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so you see the existing is worth 8.6 on that sheet, but when you get back to the sheet that you asked about, that number is suddenly 11.7. And I've never quite understood how that happens in the PlanCon documents, is my point.
Okay.
So Julia's point about the timeline and delaying this however many days before you actually have the hearing. At this point in time, if we scheduled that hearing for Wednesday night, then theoretically, as I understand it, and Jared's trying to get confirmation, we could still approve the contracts on next Monday, which was what our initial
Keep us on
intention was.
schedule. Yeah.
That would basically keep us on schedule.
That's my understanding as well, Walter.
Okay, and so, so the other issue, I think, is that, we've taken a pretty deep dive into this tonight, and got Jim confused, me confused, and probably have been Sue confused. Okay, and I'm quite certain that most of the public is gonna be somewhat bewildered by this, all these nuances. For me, Tony, I mean, I think this thing really came out really pretty good. If it was originally 20,300,000 and it came in at 21,100,000, you know, that's a number that I think the public can understand and can work with, that based on your initial estimates, when we actually got the bids in the holistic approach to it, those numbers are pretty close. Is that?
The only issue that I
They
think
are,
we're
but
talking
they
about
aren't
here,
because of the construction contingency. It was in the one value and not in the other value. Right? That's 10% was in his estimate.
it is,
Yeah, that's the 5%, the 10%, and the general conditions are now covered by the actual bids.
Correct.
Right.
But that means we have no 10% construction contingency that we were, that's what that was for.
If you look at his
Was
recommendation,
actually
he
construction.
recommended that we had $2 million, I'm sorry, $900,000 on the bottom of his, he recommended it.
which is outside of,
That's our contingency.
right.
He,
All right, that's fine.
I'm gonna call these fudge factors because I don't have a better term for them. Okay, what I think you did, what I would have done is, I would have made my best guess in those four categories. I would have added them up. I would have put the 5% in for the money, for the change of money. Because at the time, inflation was somewhere between 3 and 15%. He made a guess. He looked in your crystal ball and he said 5%. He also then looked at his other projects and his experience and said, I need to add another 10% to these numbers to get to the contract amount.
No. It was 25% fudge factor originally.
And he
And
backed
he was
off.
forced to take it
That
down.
wasn't forced, it's the normal part of
Yeah.
the process. As we
Right.
get closer to construction documents, it's easier to see what it is.
Right, and if he did that today, he would have a 0% because he knows what the numbers are.
Right.
Okay, and that's part of the process. The other thing is that the general conditions are things like the safety fence and some things that the general contractor has in his bid. Okay, general conditions are things that are in the general contractor's bid. Okay, so that number also needs to be added in. That's how I got to my, to my one number. Is I took those three numbers and added them in and included the sub costs.
Again, I appreciate Tom's analysis. I will tell you that I think, from my perspective, we're making this considerably more complicated than it needs to
Exactly.
be.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
Okay,
I think we are making it complicated. We don't need to. We told the general public that this board voted on and passed up to $24 million. And the bids came in at 21 million. So I don't know why. If we got to do the act, let's do it, get it over with, and let's move forward.
but I
I
think,
mean, we told the public we were willing to spend 24 million, and we didn't have a lot of backlash over that.
And 24, that included the soft costs.
Well, it'll still be in there.
That's the $1.5 million, that's all that.
Well,
other-
with what the bid is, we'll have that money in there if we do 24.
If we add up all the soft costs and the costs that were in that 24 million, are we still under that 24?
I believe so. I'd have to look at it again.
I don't actually know that sitting here right now.
Because that
Ron,
includes the asbestos study, that includes,
Ron, that was the point I was trying to get at.
we're over 24 million.
That you were a little more succinct about was the fact that, you know, conceptually, the numbers are $800,000 apart in round terms. I didn't do the math, but in round terms, it's $800,000 difference between what you'd kind of estimated in the total and what the bids came.
Well, I think what he's saying is that there are, and what Terry's saying is there are things that aren't in the bid results that you're still gonna have to pay for.
Right.
Yes, and I recognize that,
So Jared,
but
if we
there's
added
also a
those
$3 million,
numbers
or
Right.
$2.8
Does that
million.
actually, can we cover all that with the 3 million? And my answer is, well, I did have a 10% or around $2 million owner's contingency. If you add that to the rest of the stuff, it's probably over the 3 million, which is what he was saying, we're over 24. It's probably around 25 right now.
I have about $4 million in soft costs. And that's something I sent out to the board right
Right,
after
so
this.
that's
So we're about
So we're gonna have
25.
to have another motion to approve above the 24 million,
Well, here, again,
right?
or you can say, we don't want to carry $2 million in owner contingency.
Well, yeah, I
We
mean-
only want to carry 1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your number. It's not my number, it's yours. You
Yeah,
got
but
another
the
one you want.
contingency
Is that realistic?
is no longer in there. That was in your estimate. That's not in the
Jared
bid.
just told you, including that contingency, it's $4 million.
I didn't hear.
I don't, that doesn't include construction contingency. I said
Yeah.
4 million of soft costs, including telecom and data, security items,
Oh, it
furniture,
doesn't
kitchen
include-
equipment.
Doesn't include an owner's contingency.
Yes, I wasn't sure what the general conditions, it includes $500,000 for general
Well,
conditions.
general is in the bid now, so you can take that one off.
So to take that off, if we're still gonna leave 10% construction contingency, then I have,
Do you have-
3.5 million?
No, the recommended contingency is 915,000, not 1.8 million.
Say that again, Tom.
Construction contingency is in the contractors. It's a number that Tony used to get to the right number. We have recommended owner contingency at the bottom of that thing is 950,000, 15,000. It's a
Where did I
5%
get
number.
two?
I'm sorry?
Where did I get the two?
It was 2 originally.
Okay,
It's
so
what number I threw out there, said, who knows,
So we have some room.
Well, I don't know, Jared, you probably didn't have time. What overage did we have on the project we just finished? And then what overage did we have on the East Pike new office?
I don't know about the, I didn't look at the East Pike old office because it was a couple years ago, but I think with just a recent project, it was around probably 2 or 3%.
So what I would tell you is historically, what we see is around 2% on new construction and somewhere between 3 and 5 for renovations.
So if we use 5 for the 21-1,
Yeah, 21
so that's about $1 million. A little over.
Right, that's the 915,000 we recommended.
Right.
That's a little over $1 million, which would bring total construction costs to almost 22.2 million. And then about 3.5 in soft costs, brings the total project to $25.7 million.
Assuming you spend all the contingency.
Yes.
Exactly.
The asbestos abatement, what was the number?
But even if we spend none of it,
asbestos?
it'd still be over
We're closer.
24.
We're picking away.
So you're carrying 100,000 now,
I mean-
actual number 75.
But why would,
Reduce that 5 to 4.
So,
The latest sheet I sent the board 2 weeks ago has 75,000 in it.
Oh, but this is carrying 100,000 for that.
The old estimate we had from back in June before we approved contracts, yes.
We have an estimate of 800,000 for furniture, and we haven't replaced a single piece of furniture yet.
Or if we need one.
But we need it.
which I'm asking, I guess, even if we use 0% for construction contingency, we're over 24 million. So I think we need to do another motion.
That sounds wrong.
I think I agree with Mr. Kerr. I think you need to do an emotion. I'm not sure you need to have a hearing though.
Right.
I think, yeah, you might need to pass a motion that would extend that total limit because I'm almost positive we did put that in motion. We just have to look back and see what that original motion said. And we would have to amend that motion.
I think as you're approving the bids, you're approving going over that $24 million. I don't think because at no point in here can you, until everything's done, all bills are paid, are you gonna know an exact number? You wanna keep putting yourself into this exact number than having to revise it
That's
later.
true.
You set a budget back in February or November, and if you're now gonna go over that by approving the bids, you're approving to go over that budget.
Well, we didn't approve the overages on the other ones until after it was done. Then we come back and approved it.
Right. No, that's a good point.
I mean, 24 million set up a rough budget.
Yeah.
For the board.
No, I meant on the air conditioning, we had to come back and approve the.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be approving change orders throughout this whole project if there are any.
Right. So we're proceeding along with Item Act 34 hearing. Right? You're okay with that?
I'm okay with it. I can
As long
support
as
his
our
approach.
solicitor-
It's really, at this point in my mind, it's what Mr. Repack or Mr. Fry tell Jared.
And I think I read Ron's latest email very, very quick. He did say, I think in there, that he's okay with not having a hearing if Tony agrees.
Yeah.
He agrees, all that stuff.
That's a
So,
great idea.
So,
okay, we got the Act 34 thing figured out.
so to kind of summarize, Terry. So the gist of it is that unless we hear something different from Ray Pack and Fry in writing, no Act 34 hearing. If we hear something different from them, then we'll certainly reconsider that position. Is that, does everybody else in the board accept that?
Okay.
Okay.
Now, going back to what Tom was suggesting was, do we still want to talk about these alternates and stuff?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just out of pure ignorance. Why such a discrepancy, for example, on, what is it, G11?
G11?
G11.
It does,
I mean, it goes from 100, one group says 129,600, and the next one says 781,200,000. And then the next
There's
one.
multiple reasons why contractors do that. One is they think you're gonna deduct it, or you're gonna add it, or there's money in that. So there's a very many reasons why contractors.
Well, let me just say, perhaps you're looking at something that's outdated.
Somebody hit a
Wrong zero.
wrong zero.
Well,
There's two of them.
There's a 999.
So, yeah,
So it's
I asked, we sent to revise this out, maybe you didn't make it through, but, those numbers are actually 129.6, 108.5, 115.2, and 125.
Oh,
So there, I don't know what happened exactly there, but somehow or other Excel,
Yeah, 700 million is more than 10 times the cost of the project.
They get us money back
It
if
just
we
didn't
take
make
that
any
out.
sense to me when I was reading these. What-
In fact, we could not do any taxes for the year.
so,
700 million coming back.
so are we talking about all of that?
Okay. So do we want to talk about, Terry's asking the question on the deducts or the alternates.
I would support no deductions.
I would support that deduction.
I support that too. We're already at bare bones.
We are, yeah, we are, and what we're talking about, $200,000 to
Yeah.
not keep the windows warm. We've got little kids sitting on the floor. We
Right.
need to think about, that this is a school with elementary kids crawling on the floor, activities on the floor. The floor is the coldest place. We need to do everything we can to keep that, to keep it warm.
I'm fine with it, just 2,000, but, there, and we don't actually have to make these decisions tonight. The 41,000 for a 20-foot diameter pavilion just seems a little outlandish. And not necessary.
How much is it, Tom? Which one's that?
It's
G8.
Thank you, sir.
White Township just did the restrooms over there.
Oh, Bill, yeah,
Kennedy
sorry,
King.
yeah.
That was over 200,000.
190,000.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I question the need for a pavilion I'd rather have a couple trees there than a pavilion. Do you have an
So,
opinion?
Is that for
That's
outside
so-
education?
It was for the, yeah, that was the idea, it was going to be the beginnings of the outside educational.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Joya, you okay with leaving stuff for
Oh, I
now?
think a lot of it can be bare town, that's me. I wouldn't tag it as take the whole deduct, I would figure out, target it differently. I mean, I could even shade it a little bit, everything.
the only thing, I'm not 100% convinced that the H1 and H1A shouldn't be considered. Particularly if we're over a little bit, maybe that helps make up some of the difference to keep the cost down to that. And I realize it's not gonna get us there, but the closer we get, I think the better. But I'm also in agreement with the concept that pavilion is the beginning of the outdoor classroom, and I think at some point we did it at Ben Franklin, and at some point I think we're going to want to do kind of the same thing. And although we didn't put an outdoor classroom up here, we did put that inclusive playground. So each of the 3 elementary buildings then would have some outdoor feature for the benefit of the students.
All right, so we're moving on. Before I move on, Josie, you've been kicking me under the table. You haven't touched me. I just touched
I'm
you.
not on the list for
Do
public
you have any
speaking.
comment?
Oh, I have quite a few. It's been almost 2 years now that we've been coming to these meetings. Eisenhower suffered its destruction almost 2 years ago. Not quite. but
Over 2 years.
Over 2 years ago.
2.5.
Over to-
But we've been coming to these meetings. Originally, when you talk about being on schedule, originally you were on schedule at 31 million. You came out with a proposal, it was a 21st century school. It was going to be a school that was going to be stellar within our district. We are in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. You have cut and cut and cut. You have come back and said, we will go beyond 24 million, putting a line in the sand that obviously you're not going to be able to hold. I'm part of the public, and yet I come to these meetings and I've listened and listened and listened. And I'm kind of with Tony. This was much ado about nothing tonight. What have you decided? It's an election year. I understand that. I understand the need to look as though we are penny wise, but you're being pound foolish. 21st century. 3rd decade, and you've cut it back to what it would look like when I went there to play German kick in 1959.
I disagree.
I know you would.
We have a extensive art room, we have an extensive STEAM room. The major compromise we made between the 2 plans is we do not have a separate gym and dining area that we had planned on. I think Tony came in and took over the $35 million project and did a stellar job of getting it, of cutting out funds without cutting out functions. And I'm hard pressed to say, except for that one item, that where we've compromised.
Didn't we compromise on the library and the STEAM room?
Yes.
We were supposed to have a nice library and a
Yes.
separate STEAM room, and now it's all one.
Yes, it's compromised.
And that was done with, when Tony looked at it in more detail and what was going to be accomplished in each space.
But that was done on our
Tony was
suggestions.
told
That's
that was
great. That wasn't Tony.
The architect worked
not
at the
like-
behest of the board.
Right.
It wasn't Tony coming back. It was Tony following the behest of the board. That is my point. And if you think I'm a little upset, I've listened and listened and listened. One of the hardest things in public life is to make decisions. Hard decisions. And I think that you've ducked the bulls. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to, I think we're down to 1A3, the debt worksheet. And you had updated it, all new values. The sheet that,
Can I just go back to the bids? Are we putting the bids on the next agenda? Like, is that what you guys want? Base bids all on the next agenda? If they're on the next agenda, then they won't get approved till October. So what does the committee want?
What day are we talking? Next week.
Next week, could be next Monday.
I think based, Jared, on what I summarized earlier was, assuming we don't hear something wild and crazy from the Secretary of Ed or whoever that person is that's approving this, and or that, Ron Rapak concurs with their decision that yes, we put it on the agenda for next Monday night. If there's something comes back that would cause us pause, then I think we take a different.
One thing I'll add as a caveat to that is that these are bid day alternates. And that means that they only survive as long as you have until you award the contract. You cannot award the contract and then come back and say, and by the way, now we want alternate 3. You have to award them as part of the base contract or they disappear and they become request for change order. And they don't have to hold these numbers a day after the contract is awarded.
Yeah, that's good information. I mean, I'm not gonna support awarding the contract without a building permit. And that's just from my past work. We weren't allowed to award a contract unless we had all of our permits in place. Because it doesn't make sense from a legal standpoint or from a
We can
schedule
award the
standpoint.
contract.
It could cause the contractor that, right away have a delay claim. Because we don't know if the,
We can vote
Borough
to
is
award the
gonna-
contract.
can I finish, Tom?
If,
The borough, we don't know if the borough is gonna issue that permit next week or 2 months from now.
there's a
They
thing
can
called
say they
notice to
will.
proceed.
Right.
And the notice to proceed happens, you have to award the contract. Then you have to get all the bonding and insurance policies in. You have to get all the stuff that the contractor has to submit.
Right.
So it allows him to go get his bonding and then submit. You check that, Jared checks that, and then when Tony concurs, there's an issue of notice to proceed. Okay, so you have to do one thing first and then the second thing.
Right.
So you could award the contract on Monday. It's gonna take a few days to get the contract formatted and signed. It's also, but the signature of the contract just triggers the bonding and insurance, which they could be working on now.
Yeah, there's some terminology there that's, a little different, but it's called the intent to award. And when you issue an intent, we already have all their bonds and everything, and we've already started looking at that. We said that we probably don't need to look at J.C. Orr because you're already working with them and they're the same contractors they were a year ago. So it's only the other 3 but we already have all that paperwork. That's required to be submitted with the bid. So if you issue an intent to award, we can finish that and you can make the notice to proceed, say whatever day you want. They're 2 separate issues.
And if you wanna hold it, if you wanna hold the notice to proceed until you actually have the building permit, that is clearly our option.
Right.
Okay, if the borough does what they said they're gonna do with the show with the permits are ready to pick up on Monday, we actually won't get the building permit until the fee is paid. Okay, and that has to happen too, and then that gets processed.
Okay. So moving on to
Wait,
the,
can I ask one more
Yes,
question? I'm sorry.
sure.
But am I to assume then that all of these lowest bidders are the ones that we're going to take for each of these separate projects?
for just the base bids, the 4
Right,
contractors.
Right.
The general, electrician, the
Right.
mechanic,
So
and
we are
plumber.
definitely taking, we know that those people are good and will do a good job for us. I mean, these are bids from people that we
These are legitimate
trust their
bidders.
work and know that it's going to be a job well done.
So the process is governed by the municipal bidding laws of Pennsylvania. And it requires the board to accept the lowest qualified bid. And what the
Lowest
term
qualified.
qualified means is us checking that paperwork, which is in process now, and presuming that those contractors are qualified, their bond checks out, et cetera, you are bound to award to them.
Okay, so you do all that, that's
We do.
behind the scenes work. Okay, thank you.
And what I said earlier is that based on the analysis that we have here now, unless we find something about a contractor that the board doesn't like, the alternates will make no difference to the award of the contract. In other words, it wouldn't matter if you took them or not.
Right.
These are the 4 people that are the lowest bidders. We call them lowest apparent bidders right now.
Okay, and then you have a mechanism to check quality.
That's correct.
Well, and
Thank
the difficulty with that is, in Pennsylvania, it's very difficult to throw out a low bidder.
It is.
You have, they have to be bankrupt.
You don't want them to sue you. Because
No,
that'll
no,
stop the
no.
project right now.
No, but I was just asking for my own knowledge. I
Right.
mean, I figured there's a process for that.
There is.
Sue, when they did the junior high, there were some problems with that general contractor, but, they were very reluctant not to give it to them, even though they basically were bankrupt in the middle of the project. We had to call the bond in to actually finish the project with it. Okay, so,
I forgot about
Okay,
Yeah.
can we go on to 1A3? Did that work?
Hey,
Well, are we gonna put
any
it
other
on
questions
the-
on this?
Are we gonna put it on next week's agenda? or-
Sure.
Okay.
The agenda's published Friday.
The other worksheet, Jared, that I asked about, the one that with planned projects, so that we know how much we're short.
It's under the proposed bond, which I just didn't have it attached to the agenda yet,
Okay.
so it's under there.
All right. So that'll help, I think. It helps me then. No, and this is with the numbers. These changed a little bit though with what you just did.
Yeah, I mean, it probably came down about $1.5 million.
So the additional, the one that's in red at the bottom of this back of the page, then instead of 10.5 million, it's maybe about 9 million.
Yes,
Okay.
but that also would completely empty out your capital reserve, which is something that you use from 1 year to the next. I get that.
So how much do we want to say keep in that?
I mean, we've been carrying around $1 million every year. I mean, I think, in my mind, one of the points of taking a look at this now is to say we're at least going to need another $10 million, which is probably the max that we borrow at one time, and possibly borrow that. And then as we get closer to the end of the project, I mean, the district certainly has some fund balance to carry through a little bit. But then as we get closer to the end of the project and have better numbers as to whether you are going to buy new furniture and buy, some of these other items here, and as we start to kind of flesh out final costs, we could make a determination as to what we need to borrow towards the end.
And is your meeting next week, Julia? Audit and finance or?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you in this bond, yeah. Is it? Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So on 25-26, you could see, we have an anytime, what do you mean, a date eligibility refinance, anytime? Is that within the purview of this project? I mean, does that all happen? When are we expected to be done with this? Assuming everything goes well.
Probably the spring of 2025.
Okay, so next year we can refinance one of those bonds, the 721.
We could, my
Anytime
guess
or
is
the
they're not gonna be, with
It's
interest
not
rates.
gonna be favorable, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are some,
But still.
those are
you
borrowed
really
at
never
times
know.
when interest
Something
rates are
like
very
that.
low, but yeah.
Well, the main thing I'm concerned about is what we can reserve. So we were gonna talk about that at Monday night's meeting, because we have to vote by when?
Preferably, we would vote Monday night as well. We'll fill in a number, otherwise we could do it in October.
I don't know, wait till October. How close are you to the end of your numbers?
We should have, I mean, they won't be final numbers, but they'll
But
be
you're
pretty
pretty
close
Within,
by the end of the week. I'm hoping on Monday night, we can talk about what we think how 22, 23 went, and can make a decision as to what we want to transfer to capital reserve for 22, 23.
well, in some ways, you've almost wondered, do you borrow it now? I mean, we wouldn't over leverage us, I don't think. And I'm
You're gonna have to borrow either
You
way,
have to borrow either way,
regardless
but
of
we're
what you
not
want to
over leveraged
reserve.
right now, and the rates are still, well, I still think the rates are reasonable. I mean, I think back to when I bought a house, 5 to 8%, we're not there yet. So, I mean, of course, this is different kind of money, but, I
Yeah, we
think
need to
should-
start the process of borrowing either
yeah.
way.
And I'm thinking that we need to figure that number out and then figure out the reserve. That would be two things I think we want to try to do. When does Greenspan meet again? Is it tomorrow? When's he announcing, isn't it something coming?
This week,
I'm not sure.
Wednesday, maybe.
I'm pretty sure he said, isn't there he's gonna come out with a speech on Tuesday?
I
Well,
can look
doesn't
that up,
matter.
but
I'll look it
yeah,
up, but I'm pretty sure I read that, so it seems to me we're gonna pretty much know if they're gonna hold the rates flat or if they're gonna raise them. If they do, they're talking just a quarter point. That's what I heard him. That's what I heard the guy say.
they have a meeting tomorrow and tomorrow and Wednesday, so right at the end of the day, Wednesday.
What's today? Monday. Oh, this one, yeah.
So, does the board have anything else for Tony or Eric? I think Tony has a little bit of a trip here ahead of him.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Have a nice evening and good luck.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you.
Anything, any other questions on this debt, the bond debt worksheet or the spreadsheet for the planned projects? Not hearing anything?
No, I think it stacks up okay. I think we're okay. Estimated capital reserve expenditures over the next 2 years, 450,000, so. I mean, we're not out of line anymore.
Do we have the junior high in here?
What I don't know is if we've got the figures for the, oh, I can't talk about
Figures for which?
The swimming pool?
it.
Well, that's on the
No, I'm
plate.
talking about the other one. We had a motion on it. I don't know if since it's safety and security, I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, I've included some of that in there too, for some safety and security. I have not included the junior high pool, and again, that's another reason to include, to not completely drain your capital reserve.
No, we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Under any circumstance.
That's what I'm
You
saying,
have to
this
be in
10
bad
million
shape to
does
do
that, so if you want to keep some capital money in your capital reserve, my recommendation to at least at this point, regardless of how much money we do transfer to capital reserve, is probably to at least look at another $10 million.
And you're not expecting any slowdown, so I think the last day you can pay a discount on the real estate is what, the end of this month, 30th?
The end of September.
So is much coming in already? Do you have any clue on that?
It's been as normal as,
Okay, good.
yeah,
do you have any idea what bond rates are?
I do not.
What the market is?
Do we have any information on the junior high pool?
Oh.
In the last couple of
Hopefully
Janie?
not Tom.
Anything? Yeah?
On the repairs for the leak, is that what we're speaking of?
That's the heater and the.
We had the cost for the boiler itself. Met with this diver guy. What's that? Steve, Thursday or Friday. Spoke with him again today. We drained the small amount of water we had in there and cleaned up because there was some residue from it sitting for some time. He came out and looked at it with me. We looked at both sides. And he is prepared to come in. We'll fill it up to, I think it's about a 5-foot depth on the deep end. It'll bring it right up to the end of that steep incline. He will dive and methodically search. He explained to me how the process he goes through.
So we can cover that after he does it. And
He'll-
you don't have any figures or stuff you
We
would
don't have a
put
number
together?
for you, no.
Yeah, okay.
He gave me a ballpark idea
Oh,
for his services to find the,
Not to fix it.
but
till he figures out.
until we find it, we don't know what we're dealing with, if we find it.
Oh, we are moving on.
Yes, sir.
Concern. Thank you.
We already covered B, the permit, and we covered the Act 34. The only thing is the construction schedule, and I guess the base bid, the one where covers the 12-month schedule. Right?
15 months.
15 months, I mean, not 18 months.
Yep.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Just logistically, so we approve or we accept the bids or whatever that verbiage is used next week. Then the other stumbling blocks, we're waiting for a building permit. What else has to happen before actual shovel hits dirt, so to speak?
They'll go through completing their paperwork and such, and then we'll issue a notice to proceed. And then they can start.
So it's just paperwork shuffling that's going on.
Yeah.
We have that schedule in the contract, so I suppose that's what it is.
Right. I just wanted to know, like, what hurdles do we have to accomplish now before it starts?
I think the biggest hurdles are the building permit and the loan, right? Those are the two.
Well,
big-
we don't need the bond to get started.
No, but I mean, but those are.
Yeah.
The big
And the reserve.
capital reserve decision, yeah. But yeah, to put shovels in the ground, the building permit, and then the awarding of the bids, and we're
Notice proceed.
notice proceed. We're moving forward.
So are we gonna do like a special meeting when we get the building permit? Or are we gonna wait a month to notice proceed? Like, how's that?
Well, if we make a motion to award the contract Monday night,
Yeah, you don't have to make motions for notice to proceed, or once
Okay.
everything's in place, the architects can issue those notices to
They do.
proceed.
Yeah, and any signatures required by the owner can be done by you.
Yep.
By the administration.
anything else?
We need to decide about clerk of the works.
Yes.
Can we do that at the executive meeting coming up? Or is that a motion of the board?
It's probably more appropriate because, you know.
Yeah, I'd say we need executive session first, but then it will be a motion.
You can put a motion on the agenda just with a blank
That makes sense.
name on there.
Table it if we don't.
Chris or
If we-
Katina?
Well, let me just say this, I don't know if it's I think it's allowable or whatever, or we could have probably a 10-minute exec session that just talk about, or
Yeah, right after
clerk of
this,
the works.
if you'd like, yeah. No more than 10 minutes because the Steelers are on tonight. So.
Really?
So
Pleasure,
Dick. I just wanted, we have Chris and Katina here tonight, and I just wanted to see if you had any comments. Because this is done a little differently than a regular board meeting, and we do encourage some comments from the public.
I
I appreciate the, being able to see the conversation that took place. You know, I know it's a tough decision. I mean, anytime you're slicing and dicing with $21 million, I mean, it's tough, you know? And I think it's good that we're taking action, because some of the things that you hear out in the public they don't really know what's going on. I've heard like, it's gonna be 28 million, it's gonna be 32 million. So you come in at 24, 25, I think you're still under where they're at. And I appreciate your comments too about doing what's right for the kids, because I think that's where we've got to be rooted, always, right? You know, from cutting like heat and stuff like that. And we want to make sure our kids are comfortable, and if we're going this, you know, taking this step, we want to go the full Monty to make sure we're doing it right. So thank you for letting me be part of
Thanks, Chris.
it.
Quintina?
No, I don't have anything to say. I agree with what Chris said, and I look forward to next Monday's meeting.
Good deal.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Adjourned.
Board members are sticking around for 10 minutes?